Hello and welcome to the front-end web development class. My name is Jeffrey. Hey, welcome to the beginning of Series 10. This is the 10th series of these classes that I've been teaching. So before we get started, I'll let you know a little bit about the class in general, some meta information. This class goes once a week. I have a full-time job. My job is a front-end web developer, big surprise. And so I really only have time to teach one class a week. But I am also here on Thursdays, 2 hours every evening, just kind of sitting around, available for your questions and everything else. So lectures on Monday, that's what's happening right now, and lab is on Thursday. So before pretty much every lecture except for this one, there's a half-hour recap. Go figure why there's not a recap for this class. So if you missed a week or you didn't catch the video recap, which is or the video which is streamed online every week, then come on in, ask your questions. I'll go through a really kind of like abridged version of the material from the previous week. These lectures are streamed. The lecture is being streamed right now. There's no cameras. It's just a webcast of what's on my screen. But they're all streamed onto YouTube. So if you can't make it for a week or something, you can just tune in live. You can even ask questions. We got 2 viewers online right now, and if they want to ask questions, they can do so. They'll pop up here. I won't get any audio-visual notification that anyone's asked a question, so I'll just be checking back on the screen like say once every 15 minutes. So not ideal, but I will be able to answer questions eventually. But yeah, they're also available via YouTube. All of my previous classes are available via YouTube, so there's that. One thing worth noting, this class is for absolute beginners, in the words of, David Bowie. So if you're an absolute beginner, you're here in the right place. Because everyone here is a beginner, or not, I see some familiar faces, you should feel free to raise your hand at any time, ask me questions, stop me, because if you have a question about something, chances are someone else who is less brave than you also has that same question. So you're helping people out by asking me questions, slowing me down, allowing everybody to sort of soak in the information and get a little bit more clarification. So good on you for asking questions. Please do so. This course, given that I can only teach it once a week, goes for about 6 months. There are about 21 classes on average per series. That sounds like a big commitment. Of course, it really is only 2 hours every week. And you think, oh, but it's free. I might as well just like hop on in. It's great. But like when something's free, like you don't know what you had until it's gone, sort of thing. But when you're paying, say, like $10,000 for a boot camp that runs you through the same sort of material in like a really compressed like 3-month period, day in day out, you really kind of want to stick with that because your money's on the line. So I don't blame you if this class thins out a little after a while. It's natural. It happens. Not everyone can make it for such a long period, so that's completely fine. But if you can, be happy to see you every week. And if not, of course, you can catch up with the material online. I give out weekly assignments. I don't take attendance. I don't grade people. I don't even really need to receive your answers for these assignments. In fact, they are open book, come with an answer key, everything. But they're really meant to make you make sure that you understand the material that I've taught every week. Lectures are great and all, but really, I went through college and I really got a lot more out of actually doing the material, working on projects, asking questions, than I did kind of sitting and looking at a presentation for an hour or something. So please consider doing these assignments. I'll be sending them out via an email. Join a mailing list to be notified of class topics and schedules. And so that's where I'll be sending them out. I'll also be posting them on the class website every week. So those are kind of important, I would say, just to make sure that you understand them. And Thursday is a great time to go ahead and do them. If you want to come over on Thursday and just work on it on your own, ask me questions, work on it with other people, all completely encouraged. Again, no attendance or grades. In addition, because there's so much time between classes and because there's so much stuff to do and so much, and there's knowledge to soak in every week, I do recommend starting to think about doing a personal project. Personal project, what's a good example of that? let me see here. Front end, there we go. I posted, I forget what it was called, so I'm going to scroll down until I find it. Just Build Websites. If you search up on Just Build Websites, you might be able to find this little thing, which is a list of really great ideas of things that you might want to do as you go through this class. There's a whole list of them. You can do whatever you want. These are really, really great for practice. Just all of this stuff, it just teaches you. You know, like just any sort of experience that you can get. Experience is the single most important thing in helping you, you know, learn to do this sort of stuff. So, you know, if you're ever curious, try to pick one of these things. Think about them. You know, don't need to pick one now, but try to work on it throughout the class, and you know, I'll be happy to help you out with it as we go through the whole thing. Yeah, and I talked about the mailing list. There's a list of those on the site specifically. So you know, you've probably been to this page here. If not, it's noisebridge.net/FWD. Scroll down a little bit, and you'll see a list of things you can join. Probably a lot of you got this, you know, heard about this via Meetup, but there are also mailing lists which you can join. The Noisebridge announced mailing list is kind of a superset of the web dev email list where you get other information about Noisebridge in general. But yeah, the Facebook group is just for this class. And finally, about Noisebridge, welcome to Noisebridge. Can I get a show of hands of people who are new to Noisebridge as of today? Cool, well, welcome. Welcome to Noisebridge. Noisebridge is a nonprofit, volunteer-run hackerspace, and you are able to do excellent things here. You're able to hack here, and a lot of people have a lot of different, you know, ways of defining what hacking is. It's like, you know, approaching things in an unconventional manner, just applying your creativity in some sort of interesting way. I don't know, that hacking is what it is. But here's the place to do it. The one rule is be excellent to each other. There's also, of course, like a, you know, a safe space anti-harassment policy and like good stuff like that. But generally, you guys are free to come here pretty much at any time. If someone is answering the door, then they'll allow you in and let you work. You know, it's not a 24/7 space. You know, you might be asked to leave, you know, because they kind of want to shut down during the night. But generally, it is available for you to apply yourself creatively. If you haven't seen the rest of the site, the space, please take a tour after the class is done. There's right now there's a Python class going on behind me. There is a circuit hacking class happening in the main area, and there are so many classes and things that happen throughout the day here, or the evening at least here. And you know, a list of upcoming events and recurring events are all listed out on the front page of Noisebridge. Like I said, it is volunteer run. It is entirely funded by donations. So if you want to donate, go for it. I highly encourage donating to Noisebridge. It's something that I do not only with time but with money, and you know, you guys should do it too. A good idea if you're donating here is to click this button right here, recurring donation. That's great because, you know, give a man a fish, you know, etc. So right. You know, help out. If you really find this class, you know, helpful, then, you know, donate to Noisebridge. That's the way to do it. Yeah, that's about it. So we're done with the meta stuff, and we can get right into talking about what we're here for. Any questions before I start? Yes?
So I was let in by ringing the doorbell. Does anyone ever have a problem getting in?
Not necessarily. Pretty much most evenings there's someone who's happy to let you in. Especially during classes, it should not be a problem. Mondays and Thursdays, when I'm here, are pretty active times, and there are people who will let you in. If not, just ring the doorbell a second time, and someone will get the message, or I'll get the message, or something like that. You know, Noisebridge also has a Slack channel which you can get an invitation to. You know, they have a mailing list. You can email, you can contact people. One way or another, you'll get a pretty quick response about whether someone's in the space and let you in. So yeah,
I recommend 2 minutes between doorbells. Sometimes like people start to go for the door, and here's a second one, they go back to this chair.
Yeah, could be. Yeah, but either way, that's how it works. You know, if you do get involved with the space, there's a concept of becoming a member of the space, and that's a more kind of official role. It has to do with like Noisebridge's status as a nonprofit, and you know, as a member, you're expected to pay a certain monthly donation, but to, you know, possibly, if you can, show up at a weekly Noisebridge meeting, which happens on Tuesdays, where you can kind of talk about more like sort of items about running the space. consensus items, things like that. You get the ability to block consensus if you're a member, if you feel really strongly about something. But I'm not a member. I've never been a member. I'm really just a volunteer. So I just help out and volunteer at the space. So don't feel the need to do that or that like being a member affords you any like really special deep down privileges that just being a regular person doesn't. So that's kind of the way the place works. Yeah. All right. Let's talk about what we're here for: front-end web development. Now I need to update this list because a lot of these technologies are kind of not used at this point. Whatever. Anyway, let's talk about front-end web development. Front-end web development is about code that runs in the browser. So this class is all going to be about making websites, web pages, web applications, whatever you want to call them. Writing HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. Those are the 3 languages we're going to be focusing on. And these are what comprise every web page out there, at least with HTML, if not CSS and JavaScript. All this other stuff, we're not really going to have to worry about it. At the very end of the entire series, I'll get into a few technologies that are worth understanding as a front-end developer, like what you're going to be working with, or with what your coworkers are going to be working with if you're working with other sort of more back-end engineers. But for the sake of this class, HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. I might as well talk about it now. What a front-end developer does for their job before we get any further into it. Forgive me if I'm saying certain phrases. I kind of notice when I say like before we get further into it. I think I said that like 5 times at this point. Anyway, a front-end web developer. My official job title is software engineer, and that's really what I do. I engineer software. HTML, CSS, JavaScript, it's all code. It's all stuff running on a computer. It's software. What I do from day in, day out is I write these 3 languages either in order to work off of designs or other sort of specifications that have been given to me by more creative types, content strategists, designers, UX people, wireframe people, product folks. They're giving us instructions on what to build. We are also working, like I said, with more back-end focused people who are doing this sort of technology for stuff that runs on the server. As you probably all know, when you're on the internet, your computer is talking to some other computer out there. Via the magic of HTTP, Hypertext Transfer Protocol, you are sending out requests to some sort of computer out there, which is sending stuff back to you. All of that stuff that's happening outside of the realm of your computer is outside of the scope of this class, but a lot of these technologies are responsible for that sort of thing. So you will be interfacing with that sort of stuff one way or another. But fortunately, the world of the front end is somewhat insular in that what you're doing is completely kind of agnostic in regards to whatever's happening kind of underneath you in the back end on the server. So yeah, there's that. I don't know. Obviously, if you're looking to get into this sort of field, San Francisco is kind of the perfect place for it. It is where companies such as Google and Apple and Adobe and Mozilla and Microsoft has offices here as well. They're all here, and they're all very web forward companies. And of course, there are a whole bunch of other startups, small companies, nonprofits, other sorts of groups, collectives, what have you, that all need this sort of talent. So, and it's still a pretty good market. I mean, maybe not the peak anymore, but it's not, the bubble hasn't burst yet, so that's good. Yeah, so if you are looking to get into that sort of thing, or just making a site for yourself or for your friends or whatever else, that's what you'll learn to do in this class. Any other questions about just the whole career path or whatever? Obviously, I'm available to talk more about things that I do on the job, things that I know other people do on the job, ways to sort of get involved with the community and just to learn about kind of how the whole industry is going. But yeah, that's kind of the basics of it. It's a software engineering job at offices, working on computers with coworkers, doing things, helping you out one way or another. Yes?
I was dissecting HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, and I come up with HTML is the form, CSS is the cosmetics, and JavaScript is the function.
Yes.
So that's the front end.
Yes.
With JavaScript, you can have a Node.js to make it back end.
That's right.
So what is the back end? What is it? Is function or what is function?
Yeah. So let's continue on with what you were saying here. You're right. HTML is form. CSS is cosmetics. JavaScript is function, or structure, presentation, behavior. These three languages work together to pretty much make every web page that's out there. Every web page, without question, starts with HTML. Every time that you visit a website, your browser is downloading an HTML file. So HTML, hypertext markup language, that's what it stands for. It contains the structure of your page, all the sort of information, the content necessary to sort of convey the meaning behind your page. That's where HTML comes in. And here's a little code snippet, a little H1 tag with the words "Hello World" inside there. CSS is both these CSS and JavaScript are. I wouldn't call them nice to have, since I would say like 99% of web pages out there have them, but they're not necessary for you to be able to consume an HTML, like consume a web page. It's just HTML, which is the necessary portion. But let's talk about CSS and JavaScript. CSS, cascading style sheets, provides presentation. You have a separate file that lists out all the different sort of stylistic rules about how your content should look. Colors and fonts and sizes and paddings and different sorts of interactions in terms of animations and transitions between states and all that sort of fancy stuff about simply how your page looks, just the look and feel of your page. That is where CSS comes in. And finally, JavaScript is where behavior comes in. JavaScript is a full functioning, Turing-complete interpreted language that runs in your browser. It provides interaction and other sorts of behaviors that aren't possible with just HTML and CSS. There is a lot that is possible with HTML and CSS, solely, but as we get further and further into the future, you'll find that JavaScript is becoming a much more important, sort of bedrock foundation sort of thing of the modern web. Any sort of web application, pretty much any website that you've ever been to where you click something and something happens on the page without taking you to a different page is probably the result of some sort of JavaScript code running. So JavaScript running in the browser allows the web page to listen for input from the user, be it clicking or typing or moving the mouse around or scrolling, pretty much interacting with anything anywhere on the page. That's one thing that JavaScript pretty much excels at handling. So there's that. You mentioned, though, that JavaScript is not only used inside the browser, and that is true. Since its inception, people have thought about using JavaScript, the language, outside of the context of the browser. And it's true. I mean, like I said, it's a fully featured language. And for a while, you might have heard that JavaScript isn't like the best language to code stuff in. There's Python, there's Ruby, there's Java, there's C++, there's C, there's Rust, there's Go. There's a whole bunch of other languages out there, and JavaScript certainly is one of them. But it's sort of grown in popularity and grown in feasibility because browsers like the one that I'm using right now, Chrome, built by Google, tech companies like Google and Apple and Microsoft have put billions of dollars into making JavaScript a very, very performant, well-functioning language. So much, in fact, that people have started to use it outside of the browsers, like on servers. And so when we're talking about what servers do, is they are the ones that sort of deliver the HTML to you. They deliver other sorts of data to you as well. They are the data sources. They are the places where you're requesting stuff over the internet. So those servers need to be coded somehow. They are computers. They need to have some sort of program that's running in order to respond to your requests. And that can be coded in any language. And JavaScript is becoming a much more popular language for that sort of interaction to occur. So anything that happens outside of your browser, where your browser is making a request to some sort of server out there, Node.js, which is just a sort of a convoluted name for JavaScript on the server, is you know, kind of what's responsible for doing. Not necessarily, but can be one of many languages that's responsible for facilitating that sort of communication. So that's why JavaScript is important, not only within the realm of front-end web development, but also outside of there. Tell your friends. In a few weeks, 2 weeks, 3 weeks? I think in 3 weeks, I'll be teaching 2 JavaScript intro classes here, right, as part of this class. They are going to be they're not going to have anything to do with interaction with the browser. I'm going to be using the browser because it comes with a nice little JavaScript console where you can type stuff and get a response. But for the first 2 weeks, I'm only going to be talking about JavaScript as a language, as a programming language. So if you're unfamiliar with programming, period, you don't know what variables and functions and operators and conditionals and all those sorts of fancy things are, then that class is going to teach you and get you on your way to being a full-fledged software engineer. And you'll be able to take that information, and even if you're not writing stuff in JavaScript, you're doing stuff outside of the realm of the web browser, this stuff will be important for you. So that will be happening in a few weeks in this class. Yeah, any questions about this slide? We're almost done with slides, by the way. This is not a slide-oriented class. This is kind of a coding-oriented class, so we're almost done. Yeah?
So JavaScript could make you a front, a full stack developer?
Yes. Yeah. Simply knowledge of JavaScript can make you pretty much a full-stack developer. You might need to understand some structured query language or database SQL language or stuff like that. But generally, well, there are also databases that don't do SQL that are probably... Either way, yeah, that is one thing that could definitely put you on your way to being a modern full-stack dev. It's just knowledge of JavaScript.
And Node.js is only part that allows for that?
Nowadays, yes. Yeah, I mean, yes, pretty much. That's just what you install to be able to run JavaScript on your computer outside of the browser. Yep. Okay. Let's see here. Oh, that's it. If you haven't seen this slide, if you came in pretty much when the class started, setup for this class is pretty straightforward. Let me take you right there right now. All you need, pretty much for the majority of this class, is a web browser and a text editor. You have a web browser. Chances are everybody here is not running an old version of Internet Explorer or Safari or whatever, but if you are, consider getting a free update to the latest version of Mac OS or a free update to Windows 10. I think it's still free for a little while longer. If you were able to, ignore the little nagging Windows icon in your system tray, then install it because it's good. It's actually really nice. And any modern browser will suffice. That's Chrome, Firefox, Opera, Safari, or Edge. The latest version of any of those will be great. Internet Explorer, not as great. Obviously, there are a lot of jokes about how terrible Internet Explorer is. The last 2 versions, pretty much, were actually really good, and the new browser by Microsoft Edge, is great. It really is. So any of those will suffice. But I will say that I'm going to be using Chrome throughout the class, and I am going to be using Chrome's developer tools, which are my favorite. If you're using the browser of your choice, you might find following along with some of my more developer tools oriented stuff to be a little hard to follow because you might have to spend a little more time, kind of trying to find the equivalent sort of functionality in your browser. So for the sake of this class, I might recommend using Chrome. It is definitely my primary recommendation. Text editor, just important. Don't use the text editor that comes with your computer unless you're using Linux. If you're using Windows, Notepad or WordPad are not good text editors. If you're using macOS, TextEdit, and Notes. I should probably put that in there. Notes. Don't use Notes either. Those are not good text editors. They're not going to help you out. They are going to confuse you more than help you. The fact is that WordPad, TextEdit, and Notes, they are rich text editors. They don't save simple text files. They save files with a lot of information about font sizes and font weights and boldness and all this other sort of formatting stuff that is not going to work. The stuff that I'm teaching you about HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, it's all just really text. We're really going to be using a text editor and saving our stuff with different file extensions, .html, .css, .js. But these things are going to not work that way. You're going to open them up in your browser, and they're simply not going to function the way you expect them to. So don't use those. I would recommend using any of these. They're all free except for Sublime Text, which is nagware. It'll essentially, if you install it, it'll sometimes bother you about once a day about buying it. But any of these are good. I just added Visual Studio Code, which is a Microsoft application. It's great. I actually like it a lot. Sorry. But you know, it's a great choice. So Atom is by GitHub. Brackets is by Adobe. They're really great as well. So any of those suffice. I'm probably going to use Sublime Text because that's what I'm used to. But yeah, that's about it. These two things you don't really have to do right now. You could, if you've already gone ahead and installed Git, great. If you've downloaded the class materials, that's okay. But the only class materials are for previous series 8 and 9, which I started to put on GitHub back in series 8. So you know, if you want to take a look over the materials from the last 2 series, that's fine. But there's nothing there just yet. But it will give you a little head start in being able to keep a local copy of your own repository as we start to make updates to it. I don't even really need to get into what that all means until probably next week. Yeah, I think next week I'm going to start talking about Git, stuff like that. Kind of always forget what the actual curriculum is. Anyway, that's it. Hopefully everyone's set up. Everyone's got their text editor set up because the next thing is we're going to start to make a very simple website. So the way that development is going to work in this class is we're going to have a text editor open. We're going to have a browser open. And we're just going to be switching between the two and, you know, sort of seeing how the changes we make in our text editor pretty much immediately show up when we reload the page in our browser. That's how most classes are going to go. You know, there are some tools which we'll be talking about later on, you know, maybe a few months from now, that will help us kind of even speed up that process where it'll automatically detect changes to your code and immediately reload the browser and do a bunch of other really cool preprocessor, sassy, babbly, whatever else cool stuff that's out there. But you know, just to keep it simple, we're going to stick with a web browser, stick with the text editor, and just go back and forth and just see how, you know, see what changes come about. Cool. Without further ado, any other questions? All right, let's start. Let's open up a text editor. If you don't know what that is, that was Spotlight. If you're using Mac OS, you can do Command Space and type in the application of your choice there, and it'll open it. Cool. Yeah. So what I'd recommend, what we do at the beginning of every project is that we save our work even before doing anything. This gives us a few helpful, you know, little head starts. The first thing is that we make sure we know specifically where on our computer we're saving our code. This might sound easy to some of you, but to a lot of you, and especially in the age of tablets and phones and pretty much spending all your time on those devices, fewer people really care to learn about file systems, about, you know, home folders and documents folders and pictures folders and creating your own folders and keeping that kind of hierarchy. But for the sake of being a developer, I really do recommend that you start to think of some sort of folder hierarchy that makes sense. That is to say, from your home directory, maybe make a folder called code. Make a folder for this class called front-end web development. Call it whatever you want, really. But what I recommend is that you keep all of the work for this class in that folder. And for every class inside that folder, you create a new folder for that. So you can keep all your stuff separate, so your work from week 2 doesn't interfere with your work from week 1. So it's going to look kind of like this. My setup is that I've got a folder called FWD, standing for Front-End Web Development. Then I have folders for different series. I'm going to create a new folder right now called Series 10. Sweet. Just made a new one called Series 10 right here. And then I'm going to create a new one for Class 1. You can do it this way if you like, or you can do it whatever way you want. Make more descriptive folder names if you feel like it. Completely up to you. But I would recommend not saving all your files. Like, don't save your file as like file class1.html, file class2.html, and try to link up all your stuff in the same folder. That's going to be a bad idea. Just start making new ones for every class. So here we go, class 1. I can't really open anything because I haven't saved anything. But now that I've created that folder, we can go ahead and take this blank file and save it. So File Save or Command S or Control S. Find where you just created that folder or create a folder as you're doing this. So here I am in Class 1, Series 10, Front-End Web Development. And I'm going to save a file called index.html. The name index is not as important as the extension. I would recommend calling it this just so everyone keeps up. But .html is important. It of course stands for Hypertext Markup Language, and it's the only thing that really makes this file different from any other sort of code file. It's the extension. But saving it with this extension makes our text editor sort of turn into a mode where it knows now that this file is going to be HTML. In fact, if you look down in the corner here, you'll see that Sublime Text says, oh, HTML. It knows that simply because of the extension that we gave this file. That's going to help us out, because as we start writing HTML code, the browser, the text editor is going to help us out. It's going to do things like syntax highlighting and code completion. Syntax highlighting will color code certain parts of our document to make it a little bit easier to read as we write it. And code completion will help you out by sometimes even finishing your sentences, entering stuff in. If you've got an open parenthesis, it'll create a closed parenthesis. If you've got an open tag, it'll create a closed tag. All that sort of stuff will really help you out. So without further ado, let's write our very first bit of HTML. I'll stop there for now. Everyone can see this? I can zoom in, actually. One more thing I should mention, that if you are prone to typos, fix that. I don't really have any good advice. If you find that you write a lot of typos or that you're not necessarily the speediest on your keyboard, if you're not speedy, that's fine. But for all three of these languages, HTML, JavaScript, and CSS, being precise, being kind of exact, and not having typos, not missing characters or missing certain sorts of symbols is very important. It is the difference between your site entirely working or completely not working at all. So I would recommend that you double check if you're very new to this sort of code, that you've put in all of the different sorts of little symbols up here that you see. We've got angle brackets on all three lines. We've got an exclamation point at the top. We've got a slash on that third line. Make sure that those are all there as we start doing that, because it will definitely affect how your stuff runs. Yes?
My HTML in my first line is white. It's not.
I don't know why. I mean, is the background black?
Dark type is red. And,
That's okay. I mean, the color is going to differ from text editor to text editor. In my text editor, my HTML tags look red. In yours, they might look white. That's all fine. Yeah. Again, this is all syntax highlighting that the editor is doing just to help you out. And there are a whole bunch of different color schemes to choose from. Like, I can change mine to something like All Hallows Eve. Ooh, it's dark now, or whatever else. Mine is, oh no, where did it go? Tomorrow theme. Oh gosh. Yeah. Okay. Here we go. So they all change. The colors don't matter. What will matter is what shows up in our browser as we start to type. Oh, just really quick. Yes.
Can I ask a broader picture
Yeah.
question? So we're using text edit to show how code is written, and that when we create different instructions, that will change the way our browser looks. So this is just a tool for us to see how browsers are constructed, the languages. I'm just trying to understand the browser and text edit.
There's a diagram up there.
No, this is too complicated. I mean, it seems simple, but it's too complicated. Don't look at that. I didn't even write that. I'm not sure you did, but I mean, it works. No, I mean, it is true. This is what's happening here. But parsing element, DOM, I think we're a little beyond that. What we're doing in this class is we're writing code to make websites. Something I should mention, by the way, is that there are a lot of tools out there that will create websites without you having to write any code. And they are perfectly valid, adequate, great things to use. I'm talking about content management systems like WordPress and Joomla and Drupal. I'm talking about services like Squarespace and Wix. They're out there, and they allow you to make websites really knowing no code whatsoever. And you can get pretty far with a lot of these things. But if you are looking to learn the language and sort of get a little bit more into a more technical role where you sort of understand the inner workings of these sorts of things, and more importantly, if you want to make a site for a company that requires things like precise branding or sorts of interaction and behavior that doesn't sort of just come out of the box with some sort of plugin or theme or something, then this is the class for that. So what we're going to be doing is spending a lot of time in the text editor. And what the browser is going to be doing based on the sort of file that we're writing is it's going to be opening that up and interpreting it and sort of showing our work as we go. We have nothing to show just yet. Everything that we've written just here is going to be consumed by the browser. It's going to go, okay, I'm going to show you a blank page. Let's do that right now, by the way, since we are going to be going back and forth, we might as well. Let's open up, where is that? FWD, Series 10, Class 1, index.html. Here we are. Here's our blank file. As you can see here, instead of what you'd usually see, which is like www.something, we've got a little file : / which is basically trying to show that this file that we've just saved is being opened on our web browser. This does not mean that the file is on the internet. This means that this file is simply being opened locally from our web browser. Even though it's called a web browser, it can still open up local files as well. You can view pictures, you can view documents, you can view a lot of stuff using their web browser that is simply saved onto your computer. And you can tell that it's not on the internet by seeing that there's a little file thing. Then here's your whole file structure, your file hierarchy. So just because it's on in the web browser does not mean it's on the internet just yet. But yeah, here's our blank page. If you're getting something like a not found or a file not found or something like that, try to go back here, find your file. Double-clicking it might open up a text editor instead of a web browser. If that happens, you can go to File, Open With, and then choose the browser you want. Or you can just right-click here, or command-click, or menu-click, or however you do it, and choose Open With, and choose the browser of choice. So a lot of different ways of opening up your file. But yeah, let's go ahead and I'm going to just have these things go side by side as I start to type. Okay? Are we good? So let's talk about what I've typed up here. The first line is something known as a doc type declaration. It's something that we put at the top of HTML files to essentially tell the web browser, this is a modern HTML file. It's necessary because back in the old days, HTML has been around since 1991 in one form or another. And because HTML has changed throughout the years, certain browsers try to make sure that the old web from way back when is kind of preserved in one way or another. So they don't want to sort of break the way that old pages work, but they also want to support new technologies. So by putting this little thing at the top, doc type HTML with a little exclamation point there at the beginning, it's basically telling the browser this is a modern web page, and treat it as such. So it's kind of just a little here I am sort of little declaration at the top. So the doc type or the document type is HTML. Now let's talk about these two lines. They look pretty similar, HTML and /HTML. What we've got on all three lines on this file are HTML tags. Tag is something that starts with an angle bracket and ends with an angle bracket. Tags come in pairs. These pairs, they form elements. So I'm sometimes going to be using those terms interchangeably, but the definition, the more formal definition, is that a tag is one of these things that has open and closing brackets, and when they come together like this, they form an element. This is an opening tag, and this is a closing tag. You can tell it's a closing tag because it starts with a slash. There we go. They come in pairs, they open and close. There are some tags in the language that neither open nor close, they're just there. They're known as void elements. They simply don't have anything inside them, so there's no need to open or close them. They're just there. And we'll be seeing those in a little bit. But in the meantime, we've got our first tag called the HTML tag, or the HTML element. And this is basically saying this is the root of our page. When I say root, you can start to think of it as a tree metaphor. We're going to start with sort of a trunk that contains a whole bunch of branches inside it. Or you can think of it as the other way, that you've got a big container that starts to have smaller containers inside it. Whatever metaphor you choose, we're going to be starting to talk about nesting, about how the HTML element contains everything else. So that means that everything else that we're going to be writing is going to be in between the opening and closing HTML tags. Okay? Make sense so far? All right. So inside the HTML element, we have two tags, head and body. My text editor is trying to help me by auto-completing my code for me. That's, like I said, one thing that it does when I type HTML, but sometimes I'm not ready for it. But yeah, these are inside the HTML tag. I'm helping you guys out a little bit by indenting these tags here. I'm just using some spaces here. If you've been watching Silicon Valley, you know there's a debate about that, but I use spaces. But yeah, these spaces, I use them to denote that these are inside the HTML element. Basically, the further the indentation is, the more they're sort of seen as inside them. They're not necessary. The web browser is going to completely ignore them. It's going to gloss over them. But they're for your sake. They're for your help. And I very highly recommend using them just to keep your stuff in order. If you don't indent your stuff, it's going to be very hard for you to visually piece out where an element begins and ends, or what's inside what. So I would very, very much recommend, as you start to type stuff out, that you indent your stuff, and that everything inside this head element, how many spaces do you think are going to be inside this? Like for all the elements inside here, at least how many spaces will there be? Given that these are 2 spaces here? 4. Everything inside head is going to start at 4, right? Because it's going to be inside this head element. So, you know, we'll start there. So, head and body. Of course, you know, head and body. What do these mean? What's in the head? What's in the body? Is the head like the very top of the page where the body is everything else? No. The head and the body are the 2 elements that show up inside the HTML element. The head is what contains information about the web page that you're on. By information, I mean things like the title of the page, a description about the page, keywords that sort of describe what the page is all about, information like a little image to show when you share the page on Facebook or Twitter or somewhere else. You know, a little short description, the author of the page, you know, maybe the source or the site that the page is a part of. All these sorts of little bits of information that are going to be digested either by the browser or by Google when it indexes your page and lists that out in search results. That Facebook and Twitter are going to show as little you know, previews of what the page is about. All that sort of information is going to go inside our head. But it's not going to directly affect what shows up on our page when we actually load it up in the browser. All of that structure, all of that content shows up inside the body element. So I'm going to skip over putting something in the head for now and just put the word hello inside our body. Yes?
How do you comment?
How do you comment in HTML? I'll get to that. Yeah, I'll tell you, whatever. So if you want to have stuff that doesn't show up on the page and that isn't even hidden on the page, but it's just stuff that is there for you to sort of keep notes or just maybe temporarily, you know, keep stuff hidden or keep stuff on the back burner as you're writing your stuff out. Every coding language that I know of has a way that you can write comments that are pretty much just human language, English language things, notes that you've taken to better describe what's happening on your page. So if you want to keep comments, then the delimiters look like this. Everything that's happening inside here, starting with a little bang here with the 2 dashes, and then ending with 2 more dashes and the little angle bracket. It's just going to be like that. It's not going to show up. It's not going to affect the way the page renders. It's not going to affect anything. But it's just going to be sitting there in the code as, you know, stuff for you to sort of just demonstrate what's going on, just to keep notes for yourself or tell other developers what's actually happening. You know.
Are there also single line?
No, this is one single line. It just looks like it's more than one line because it's wrapping. But no, in HTML, there's only one type of comment. It's just a block comment. You can put as many spaces in here as you want. You know, but everything between here and there will not show up on the page. Cool. All right. So those comments, I'll show you guys how to do those in CSS and JavaScript as well, if I remember to do it. Cool. So shortcuts. No. Well, maybe. I mean, depending on your text editor, you might be able to say like. No, you can't. You can't do / in HTML. This is the only way that you can comment in HTML. Cool. So let's see what this looks like. Here we go. What I recommend you do from a you know, sort of a workflow standpoint is just switch back and forth between your text editor and your browser. Whenever you want to see new stuff on your browser, as long as the page is loaded up, all you have to do is just press the reload button. And as long as you've saved your text and pressed reload over here, then it should simply just load up that file again. You don't need to go to the file menu and open the file again. You don't need to go back to you don't need to go back here and click it again. You just need to press the reload button. That's what that does. Or Command R or F5 depending on the browser. All right. Hey, I thought I'd answer some questions real quick since I just saw them. Yes, here's a little infinite loop thing. Labs can definitely be done. Well, assignments can be done from home. Labs, I'm not going to be webcasting, so you can't attend something if you're not there. But you know, I certainly will be sending out an email with the information from the previous lecture and, you know, the assignment for everything. So yes, you will be able to do those assignments from home. You'll have the answer key, and you'll be able to email me at any time with any questions. There's that. Yeah. If you want to email me, by the way, it's jeffreyhtw@gmail.com. If you go to my site, which is jeffreyhtw.com, you can just press the email button right there and just email away. My page is my website is also linked right here, so just click my name and you'll be able to go ahead and find the email button. So there's that. Oh, sorry, labs you done from. I just selected the wrong answer. So whoops. Anyway, the text editor that's best. I don't know. I have no opinion. Some people like Atom, some people like Brackets, some people like Sublime, some people like Visual Studio Code, some people like Text Wrangler, some people like Notepad++. But I can only tell you that the text editors that are bad are WordPad, Notepad, and TextEdit and Notes. Don't use those. Please don't use those. Anything else is fair game. Please see the answer to the other question for the answer to this one. Okay, cool. So, does everyone see this in their browser? If they got this open, they just see the words hello? Cool. So, you can write text, you can write whatever sort of stuff you want. It just goes inside the body. Everything inside the body is stuff that is the content that is going to show up on the page that's actually going to render. So, there we go. But what goes inside head? Here's one thing that always goes inside head. It's a title. Oops. This title element contains text, which is going to define the title of the page. And this is not going to show up on the page, but if I save and reload, you'll notice that my tab bar up at the top now says my website. So whatever you put here is going to show up in your tab bar. It's also going to be whatever's, you know, whatever the name of the result is in your Google search results, whatever's going to be shared to Facebook, whatever's going to be shared to Twitter. It's going to be used in a bunch of places. So it's very important that you just create a title for the document that you're currently on. So again, my website shows up right there. You can type whatever you want here. Crazy website. Whatever you want, and it just shows up there. Cool? Okay. So, we've talked about the different sort of anatomy of the HTML file. We got our head, we got our body. But HTML has many, many more tags. Fortunately, you don't need to know all the tags to be a good web developer. I don't know them off the top of my head. There's like, I don't know, 100 of them. You really only have to know a good maybe dozen of them. So I'll go through some of the basics. Here's one. This is an H1 element. H1 tag, H1 closing tag, and here's the stuff inside it. H1 stands for heading 1. If you've ever worked with a word processor, you've ever formatted a document and like had different sections of a document, you might have seen a little format drop down where you can say like, you know, choose a certain format. Like what I mean by that is docs.google.com. Create a new document in Google, for example, and you'll see that you can choose things like normal text, heading 1, heading 2, heading 3, etc. That's what I'm talking about. Depending on what you surround in this stuff, it's essentially providing, you know, the kind of importance level for the text that's inside there. Notice I'm saying importance level. I'm saying like I'm calling it a heading. I'm calling it important to a certain extent, but I'm not necessarily demonstrating that when you reload the page that you'll see big, bold text inside there, because as we're going to see very soon, we don't use different elements just to make text look different. And that's a very important thing that you should take away from this class. Just because the H1 element makes the text look really, really big and really, really bold doesn't mean you should depend on it for that sort of thing. What I mean by that is that not all H1 headings are necessarily very big. You can change their styles to be very small. You can change the styles to hide them entirely. You can do a whole lot of things with them. But what I'm trying to demonstrate in HTML is not how using different elements makes stuff look different, but I'm trying to introduce the concept of semantics. The idea where the tag that you use has a certain purpose behind it, and that purpose is not necessarily to make the stuff look different. It's more to describe what is contained inside that element. So hello sounds like a good use for a p tag. That stands for paragraph. And of course, a paragraph can have one or more sentences. And if I save and reload, then of course, here we are. Welcome to my website. As you can see, nothing changed when I surrounded this text inside a P. You know, but it's sort of important to denote that the text that you're writing, one or more sentences of just informational stuff in kind of a human readable English language or whatever language, can be surrounded inside a p tag. Yep, cool. Let's make another p tag. You're going to see that there are going to be multiple paragraphs. You're never going to want to nest one paragraph inside another. Like you've never had something like this where it's like, oh, look at my website. Here's paragraph 2. You don't do that. This is not going to work. There are some rules based on just how HTML is put together where you're not supposed to have certain elements inside other elements. And one example is that paragraphs are not supposed to be inside other paragraphs. It doesn't really make sense. These are things that are supposed to be siblings of one another. If you have a news article, there's not really ever a situation where you have like a paragraph inside another paragraph. That's just known as more text, right? You know, so there are things like quotations, you know, other sorts of figures and diagrams and other sorts of things that you can have inside an article, for example. But in terms of paragraphs, you don't have other paragraphs inside them. You simply have them following after. So here is what's going to go in our second paragraph. My favorite website is Noisebridge.net. So go ahead and do that and reload. Cool, my favorite website is Noisebridge.net. Let's click this and nothing happens. Okay. But, you know, if you've ever posted a Facebook post or a tweet or any sort of social network thing, you might have noticed that if you posted in what looks like a URL, something.com, something.net, HTTP, www, whatever, that it automatically turned it into a link. Well, that doesn't happen in HTML. Those are just those services trying to make things easier for you, so your friends can go ahead and click that stuff without having to link it up themselves. But we don't provide any, none of that comes out of the box. We have to set up that functionality ourselves. So if we want to click this text to go to noisebridge.net, we have to surround that text in a new element, which is the A element. Let me just zoom out a little bit to make it a little easier to read. Oh. It looks like this is on a new line, but this is all one line. So let me zoom out just a little more. I hope that's not too small. And all the spacing I'm doing is just meant to make it easier to read. All this spacing here doesn't matter. I could get rid of it if I wanted to. It's not a big deal. So I'm going to save, reload. Still nothing. Nope. Clicking on it doesn't do anything. So what does this A element do if I surround some text inside it and nothing happens? Well, this A is one of many elements in the HTML language that requires a little bit more information in order to do something. So the A element pretty much always comes along with something inside the opening tag called an attribute. And the attribute that we're going to use is called href. And then it's going to follow with a little equal sign and some quotation marks. Inside those quotation marks, you can put the full URL, Uniform Resource Locator, URI, the full web address for whatever you want, noisebridge.net in this case. Looks like it's looping. It's not. Please don't put an enter here. It just is going on to the next line since it's too long. Actually, I can fix that. Kind of. Can't make it any smaller. Oh, there we go. So let's see what's going on here. First of all, if we save and reload the page, we now see that it's underlined. Either it's purple or blue, depending on whether you've been in noisebridge.net before. So let's see what happened there. And if you click it, of course, you'll go to Noisebridge. There you go. Of course, that doesn't necessarily mean that your browser, that your site is on the web. Just because you have a hyperlink doesn't mean you're on the web. It just means you can link to things that actually are on the web, like noisebridge.net. So href stands for Hypertext Reference. Really weird name, but let's talk about hypertext really quick. I talked about HTML standing for Hypertext Markup Language. Let's kind of dissect that a little bit. Hypertext is really just a concept where you have certain phrases that are clickable throughout some text. It's hypertext. You click it, you go on to the next thing. There's this whole concept from the 80s of hypercard, where you have kind of a interactive slideshow where you can click on certain parts and go to different cards and navigate through a set of cards. Hypertext is really just that, but with just text. Any sort of underlined thing, you're going to be using an anchor element. Anchor, it's called that for really weird reasons, but you can just think of it as the hyperlink element. And href stands for the actual thing that hyperlink is going to point to, its reference. So hypertext reference, that's what this stands for. And of course, you're familiar with these, they're URLs. You do need the HTTPS at the beginning. If you just do this, it's not going to be nice. Let's save it and see what happens if it's that, and see what happens if that happens. Oh no, your file was not found. It tried to go to Series 10 Class 1 Noisebridge.net. Whoops. So if you're trying to link to a different website that isn't your current one, you need to put that full HTTPS : whatever at the end. Otherwise, it's not going to just figure out that you're referring to some other website out there. It's going to think that you're talking about some sort of file with a .NET extension on it. So not what you want. Cool. So I've gone a little while without any questions. Anyone? Yes, what's up?
So you always have to put text in paragraphs? I mean, you couldn't just have text that you have.
You totally could. You can definitely go without these paragraphs. But there's no easy way to separate these onto different lines without separating them into different elements. So I mean, I could get rid of this paragraph, this paragraph here. I could really just have kind of free floating text right in between this H1 and this paragraph, and actually it won't really look very different. So that's fine. That's cool. But we'll see when we start to style this page using CSS, or start to make a little bit more complex structures in HTML, that surrounding certain things in elements that are appropriate is really going to help us just kind of lay out the page, apply proper styling, just have a little bit more freedom and control over how the page is going to look. So when you see multiple sentences that are right next to each other that sort of form a cohesive message, that's a paragraph. Use the P tag. Again, nothing changes visually, but things will change down the line as we start to get a little bit more in depth. Okay. So, any other questions at this point? Thoughts, confusions? Yeah.
I'm at the point where I'm going to edit it, but convert to my first website. I'm lost.
Have you opened this up in your browser?
Yeah, I have the browser, but I haven't saved it. I'm stuck at it.
Well, you can save as you go, but you definitely have to save it first before your browser can open it.
We got it.
All right, he'll help you out. Any other questions? Yeah.
And then the use of headers, is it only one per web page, or is it up to headers per web page?
That's a great question. You can use as many headings as you want. This is H1. There are headings H1 through H6, but that doesn't necessarily mean that you can end there. If you have a very complicated page with many subheaders, like section within section within section, there are ways to sort of restart your numbering based on the kinds of elements that you use. Certain elements called sectioning elements can kind of reset your numbering if you start putting headings inside them. So yeah, I mean, there doesn't need to be only just one H1 on the page, but oftentimes there are, just because it is meant to be kind of like it's used to be like the main title of your site. So no hard and fast rule about there being only one. There are certain elements where you can only have one on the page, but those are few and far between. Headings, paragraphs, links, you're going to find those all over the place, constantly repeated forever. So yeah, cool. All right, so let's talk about another basic thing that we'll see a lot of, and that's a list. That's a UL tag. So L stands for list. What does U stand for? U stands for unordered. There are two general kinds of lists in HTML. In fact, there are three. There's a definition list, but we won't talk about that right now. There are unordered and ordered lists. But a better name for them would really be a bulleted list and a numbered list. But they're called unordered and ordered because bulleted is a little bit too much of a presentational term. What I mean by presentational is that, yeah, this list, when you use it, is going to put bullet points behind every item. But those bullet points are more of sort of a visual sort of addition rather than showing that this is a list that has no necessarily important order to it. Any list that does have an order where you do have to follow steps, first through last, you would use OL instead of UL, and each item would by default show up as numbers like 1 dot, 2 dot, 3 dot. You can change that around. There are a lot of different ways that you can determine what kind of numbering system you use for your numbered or bulleted lists. But anyway, we'll start with the UL. Inside the UL must come 0 or more list items. That's LI, list item. So already the structure is going to get a little complicated. We got a lot of zigzagging going on. We got UL, LI, here's a list, end LI, and then LI again, close LI, open LI, close LI. this gets complicated quickly. So just make sure as you're typing this out that every element that you open, you know where it closes. This sort of indentation that I'm giving you here is going to help you out immensely because you're not going to see like, oh, crap, I opened up an LI and then I opened up another one and forgot to close the previous one, and now I don't know if I'm inside an LI or I'm outside of this or whatever. Really, like I'm saying, indentation is seriously going to help you out. So I would very highly recommend, doing something like this where you've got stuff in and out, like I have here. And as you can see, I went ahead and saved this text file. I went over here, reloaded, and now we've got a nice little list here. It's pushed out, indented by a little bit. It's got these bullet points behind every line. And there's that. Any questions at this point? Can I show the markup to open up in a new window? Oh, yeah, sure. So you're asking about links specifically. The link that I made opens in the same tab that you're currently in. There's another attribute that you can add to hyperlinks to make them open up in a new tab or a new window. Oh, I shouldn't have pressed done. Well, I'll show you right now. The answer is it's target. And this is really weird and non-standard, but you use _blank, which I really don't like to teach this sort of stuff in the first class because it does nothing but confuse people who are trying to go like, oh, I get this. All of a sudden there's an underscore coming there and like, blank, what? I don't get it. But yeah, just to answer the question which was asked, yes, open something up in a new tab, you add an additional attribute to this A. So you can put it before or after href. The order does not matter. But what I've got right here is target equals _blank, and then href equals https noisebridge.net. Those two together, if I reload this page and click noisebridge.net again, you'll see that it opens up in a new tab. So that's your answer right there. I know a lot of that. The general, kind of the de facto way that people do things is that if it's an external link that goes to a different site, they'll sometimes use this target blank thing. It's not the most accessible thing. That is to say, people using assistive technologies like screen readers or something might be a little confused by the fact that they have opened up an entirely new window and might have trouble getting back to the page that they were on. That said, a lot of people like to make it so, the site that you were on is still in that tab. So if you want to come back to it later, there it is, waiting there for you. It's a great, retention tactic, essentially. So people don't necessarily leave your site. They've just got two sites open, right? So, either way, that's what target blank does. That underscore is necessary to open up in a new tab. But, yeah, that's some weird gobbledygook from the internet. Cool. So, questions about unordered lists? If you wanted to change this into an ordered list, you want to have these bullet points turn into numbers. It's as easy as changing UL, unordered, to OL for ordered. Make sure to close to change the closing tag as well. And all of a sudden, 1, 2, 3. Does this mean that you should never put the words 1 dot, 2 dot, 3 dot in your HTML? Yes, it does. There are certain things that show up on the page like automatically, like 1, 2, and 3, which you don't actually have to write yourself in your HTML. The way that HTML works is that you depend on the structure that HTML provides to sort of lay out your page, and that includes automatically generating these sorts of numbers for you. So no counting necessary. It saves you the hassle of having to renumber something if you put something in the middle of the list or something, and all of a sudden you have to bump the numbers up all by 1 for everything that comes after it. Not necessary. You just make sure to use an OL, and all of a sudden it just does the counting for you. There's a little comment to help you out there. Okay, so I could continue teaching you about different sorts of elements, but this is definitely enough. to understand kind of just the basics of how an HTML file is laid out. Pretty straightforward, pretty basic. HTML is not about bells and whistles. It's about structure. It's just about conveying a very easy to read, easy to understand sort of page. Just giving you an example right here. Let's look at LabZero.com. I guess this is a shameless plug or whatever, but this is the company I work for, LabZero. Here's a site that I made for them a few years ago. And this is a nice looking site. You scroll down, you got a lot of cool interaction as you go. You know, there's cool hovery stuff, and the page looks all right. But really quick, I'm going to go ahead and disable all of the styling and just make it look like pure HTML. 1 second. Get rid of all of these. Delete, 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 delete this, delete that. Where's that link tag? Style sheet. Here we go. Get rid of that. Get rid of this one. That's going to do it. OK. So here's our site. Well, whoa, kind of, with just HTML and maybe a few extra things that are going to make it look weird. But this is just the HTML. I've gone ahead and gotten rid of all the CSS that made it look like it did. But as you can see here, based on the way things look, the fact that there's font sizes and links and whatever else, you'll notice that this is an unordered list. This is a heading. Subheadings. This heading is an H2 because it's not as big as this H1 here. When it all comes down to it, the HTML of a page, the way that it's laid out and the way that it's conveyed is very important, because not every person and not every robot or not every machine or piece of software or whatever that browses the internet is going to be capable or going to choose to apply CSS and JavaScript to your website for many different reasons. For one reason, of course, CSS is a purely visual thing. There's barely anything in CSS that you know, does things beyond change the way that a site is perceived visually. And not everybody has the benefit of perceiving a site visually, right? My wife, Anna, works for UC Berkeley in the accessibility department, and she is constantly on my case about making sure that the sites that I make are accessible. That means that I'm using the correct elements where I'm supposed to use them, and that I make sure that the site can be understood, can be read, can be interacted with by somebody who does not have the benefit of sight, does not have the benefit of a screen with everything laid out in two-dimensional space. They will need to have something like a screen reader, which is, of course, a piece of software that goes ahead and reads off the screen for you using computerized voice, or something else. And not only screen readers, not only people with you know, needs for accessibility. Web crawlers like Google, Bing, whatever. They all go throughout the web and they try to read this stuff in the same sort of way. They try to understand it. And the better your HTML markup is, the more they're going to be able to understand what your site is about, and the more likely that your site is going to be ranked in such a way that you know, where it can understand why it's ranking it in a certain way. It'll probably bump it up a little bit. So if you're interested in SEO, search engine optimization, that whole sort of thing, then this is a good thing to learn. It definitely you know, is kind of the basis of making a nice, easy to navigate, easy to understand website. So good HTML is important. All right. That said, let's talk about CSS. So I want to create a new file in this folder. So I'm going to go ahead and create a new file, file new or command N or whatever. I'm going to save it as style.css. When you save this file, make sure that where you save it is the same folder that you saved your index.html. If you don't see all this sort of stuff, if you're using something like Sublime Text or something, it might look a little bit more like this. Make sure you press this little arrow right here, which is going to expand it, and you're going to be able to see the files that are inside the folder that you're inside. You should see index.html. You should be inside class 1 or whatever you called it. That's important. And we're going to save a style.css file. All right, we got style.css. So there's our HTML on the left. We're going to write some CSS on the right. As you can see, our text editor knows we're about to write some CSS. Down in the lower right, there's the word CSS there. So it knows that as we type, it's going to start coloring things a different way, just to make it a little bit easier for us to read and understand what's going on. As you saw with our HTML page, things are red, things are green, things are black, things are gray, based on the part of the language that it is. But it's all text. Just remember, it's all text with a different extension. Yes? In Sublime Text, you can go to View, Layout, and then choose a number of different columns. You can do Command Option 2, which is what I just did. To do split screen between my browser and my text editor, that's a feature of macOS El Capitan, or macOS Sierra, if you've got it. You can basically go ahead and maximize a window and drag it up here, and then sort of drag one on top of the other, and then sort of have it like be a split screen sort of thing. So that's how I got that to work. So, yep, that's how I got it. Okay, so yeah, let's go ahead and change how this page looks. This is where we can go crazy. This is where we can put our designer hat on and make it look however we want. CSS is a lot more freeform. It really allows, it's a place where you can do whatever you want to the page. Change it around however you want. Write a bunch of hacky code. It doesn't matter. It's just about making the page look different. So I'm going to go ahead and make the background pink. Okay? So the entire page is going to be pink. I don't think this is going to work. I saved it in the same folder as index.html. I'm going to reload the page. Nope, nothing. So saving it in the same directory is not good enough. How do we link these two together? How do we make it such that when you open up an HTML file, that the CSS file comes along with it? That's a job for that head tag that we've got up here. We're going to put a new element up here in this head tag that contains information about other sorts of files that need to be loaded along with this file. Now, here's where some naming gets tricky. The element that we're going to be used is called a link tag, but it's not a hyperlink tag. It's not an A tag. It's literally called the link tag. This tag has the responsibility of linking different files to this file from more of like a meta standpoint, kind of like behind the scenes. It's going to be the responsibility of the browser to load up that additional file when necessary. So it's going to look like this. Link, and we're going to add two attributes. The first one's going to be familiar. It's going to be href for hypertext reference. And we're going to type in style.css. So href is really just going to be the name of the file that we want to link up. The second one is going to be rel equals style sheet. So this is what it looks like here. Rel stands for relation, and we need it in order for the browser to understand why we're linking up this CSS file. Even though there's a CSS extension, that's not enough information for the browser to know that the file that is being loaded up is a style sheet. We have to say relation equals style sheet for it to load up properly. Okay, so once you've done that, go ahead and save it. Reload the page, and nothing. Still something's wrong. But you know, we'll take a look at the source here. You can go ahead, right-click, and view page source and see, look, that's all the same stuff. Link tag is showing up right there. So why isn't it loading up style.css? Well, it is, but we're missing something in style.css. It's not good enough that we just said background is pink. Because CSS is a language where you write rules that apply to different parts of your page. You can't write a rule that applies to the entire page. There is no such thing really as the entire page. There are only elements on that page. So if you want to apply a background to the entire page, you have to choose the topmost element that everything is inside. Does everyone know what that element is? No. HTML. But you did say body. Sorry, let me back up. Body is actually also applicable in this case because everything is kind of in it that you can see, but the topmost element is indeed the HTML element. So you can choose either, in this case, HTML or body to be the element that receives the background color. But just to be modern, just to make sure, just to sort of demonstrate down the line that HTML and the body element are two separate elements, we're going to apply it to the HTML element, which is going to make the entire page pink. So it's going to look like this. HTML, then we're going to use these curly brackets by doing shift, right square bracket above your enter key. HTML, curly bracket, background pink, and then you do a little end curly bracket. What we've just written here is a full-fledged CSS rule. This rule has 3 main parts to it. The first is the word HTML there. And this part of the CSS rule is called a selector. It's the part of the rule that says what part of the page is going to get this styling applied to it. It's basically an instruction for the browser to select something on the page that matches this description and apply the properties that are inside this little thing here. So inside these curly brackets, we have a series of different declarations. Each one of these declarations has a different property. And this property is some sort of visual style, like background or color, which applies to the text color. Font family, font weight, font style, text decoration, text transform, height, width, margin, padding, float, display, position, top, right, bottom, left. The list goes on. There's a whole lot of them. And it's actually a little bit more important to understand how all of those work versus how all these different HTML elements work. Because at the end of the day, we're going to be able to use CSS to change the presentation of every single one of these things. We can write CSS to determine whether certain stuff on the page even shows up in the first place. Whether it shows up on its own line or whether it's in line with other elements. Whether it's big, whether it's small, what color it is, all that other sort of stuff. That's all going to be written in CSS. So background is the property. Pink is the value. Yes?
Just answer the question.
Okay, cool. So yeah, 3 parts. We got selectors, properties, and values. The properties and values come together to make different declarations. So there we go. Every property has a colon. I'm sorry, every declaration has a colon separating the property and the value. And then there's a semicolon at the end. So please note the syntax. Colon, semicolon. Semicolon is the one with the comma. All right? Cool. So let's see if that works. It worked. Hooray. We have now a nice pink website. It's kind of like an error message. Whatever. All right, so at this point, I want to stop because I want to make sure that everybody's on the same page, that they're not missing anything, that this isn't working for them. Because there are a lot of things that could have gone wrong here. You could have saved your CSS file in the wrong folder. You could have written your link tag improperly, not named it style.css or not referred to it as style.css here. Could have misspelled style sheet, forgotten the rel style sheet entirely. You could have forgotten to save both of these files. You could have forgotten to reload your browser. You could have forgotten an ending bracket here or an opening bracket there. There's a lot of stuff that can go wrong. So I don't blame you if something has gone wrong. And I definitely do want to make sure that everybody's on the same page and that we all are able to link these two things together. This isn't whoosh going over your head and that you're like, I give up, because I don't want that to happen. So any questions, any concerns at this point? Anyone need me to come over and look through stuff? Because I'd be happy to. Do you want me to look?
Yeah, well, yeah.
Okay.
I have to start off.
All right. Again, as you know, I webcast all these things, so you can feel free to take a look at them later. Cool. First problem is this says rel. It should say rel. R-E-L. So go ahead, make sure you save that once you do that, and then you write the style CSS stuff in there. How's it going?
So it's CV.
Yeah, so it looks like you have 2 copies of it. So, well, you should get rid of one pair of the files. What you should do is you should find out where specifically you're actually saving these 2 things. I'd recommend saving them inside the classroom folder, because if you come here next week, then you're going to want to save stuff inside phones. So I recommend moving the files or doing whatever, but making sure that you're going to get that folder. And then it's important to, once you've made those changes, to resave these files in a new location. Because if you keep making changes, then it's going to simply save new versions of this folder again. So before you do any other changes, do a save as. Make sure you put them in the right place. Yeah. And then same thing in your web browser. You're going to want to open them up from that folder. Yeah?
I separated
Go to view, layout, and then just choose single.
Okay. So when I reopen it and I want it to look like this, just change that.
Yeah, then you can drag one of the tabs over it. That's going to be it. Cool. All right. Where are we at? Okay. We're going to go for probably another 15 minutes, and then I'll be done. So just so you know. Let's add a few more styles to this page. We've made the background pink, but I'm not crazy about this font. I'm actually a bigger fan of Helvetica instead of Times New Roman, which is the default font. So I'm going to go over here and make everything font family Helvetica. This might not work on Windows, because Windows has no concept of what Helvetica is. Helvetica is really only available on Mac OS. So we could say Helvetica, or we could use another term for the family of fonts that Helvetica is inside, called sans serif. Sans serif means without serifs. It basically means it's one of those fonts that doesn't have all those little flourishes at the end of everything. You compare the previous font, Times, to this font, and you'll see that it looks a little fancier, a little more official. It's because it's got those little flourishes, little serifs is what they're called at the end of every terminator. This is just a lot more kind of straight line sort of stuff. So it's a sans serif font. And that's what will show up on Windows, on Linux, on whatever else in a very similar format. Okay? Let's see. Oh, I should mention that in CSS, there's also comments. So if you want to leave comments about what specifically is happening in your file without changing how the web browser consumes it, it looks like this. So it looks different than in HTML. It doesn't look like bracket bang dash 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 bracket. It looks instead like slash star and then star slash. It's a different commenting delimiter system. But everything inside there is just going to be completely ignored by the browser. It's just there for your help, just so you can sort of, my recommendation with commenting is that if you've ever written something down that you think you're going to come back to it the next day and not know what the heck you did, write a comment about it, describing what you just did. Not only for your sake, but for other people's sake. Oftentimes when I'm working with clients and I know that the code that I write is going to be handed off to other developers, I make sure to comment my code liberally because someone else is going to take a look at that and go, what was that person thinking? And comments are going to say what I was thinking. So that's kind of why I use them. Yeah? Cool. All right, so I'm done styling everything on the page. I want to make specific things look different. I want to make it such that that only the list items look a certain way. So instead of writing, I'm going to write a new rule, but instead of writing HTML, I'm going to write li. And that's going to select every list item element on the page. Everything that starts with li, like right here. So I'm going to say color equals green, or color colon green. And now they're green. So color refers to the color of the text, not the background color. That's where you use background or background color. Color refers specifically to the text. We can make the text stand out a little bit more. We can say font weight bold. And now it's bold. It's heavier text. We can say font style italic. And now it's on a slant. It's italic. What else can we do? Noisebridge.net. It's a different color, but I don't like the underline underneath it. A lot of sites don't put underlines underneath hyperlinks anymore, so let's get rid of that. So every A on the page has a text decoration of none. So what does that mean? Text decoration none, no decoration. Well, a decoration in this case is an underline. So the default styling for one of these links is underline. But that's not going to change anything. So I'm going to set the text decoration to none, which is essentially going to undo the rule which is already set. And as you can see now, the underline is gone. But you can still click on it. It still works just as good, just as well. Any questions online? No questions online? Cool. All right. So as you can see here, we have 3 different rules. They highlight different elements on the page. They're powerful in that this rule not only applies to one element, but it applies to all elements of the same type. So that's some pretty cool stuff. Next week, we're going to talk a little bit more about CSS, some of the basics before we can really go any further, specifically talking about things like classes and how we can apply classes to specific elements and make them stand out from any other element on the page, regardless of what the element name is. So that's one thing we'll talk about next week. We'll also talk about a few other CSS properties, just enough to really be able to get us to make the simplest site possible. I mean, this is kind of the simplest site possible, right? So you can have a field day. You got it. Go ahead, use it. But next week, we'll get a little bit further into the basics. The week after that, we're going to take a hard turn into JavaScript. So wait, hold on a second. Am I right about that? No, I'm sorry. 3 weeks from now. 1 week is going to be talking a little bit more about this. The next week is going to be talking about Git and about how to keep our code in a place, learn about workspaces and things like that. And then we're going to talk about JavaScript. Before I'm forgetting already what my curriculum is because it changes a little bit every time. So just making sure. Yeah, okay, yep, yeah, I was right. So next week it's more CSS. The week after that it's talking about Git and learning about the command line, which is probably a tool which is worth understanding. And then we're going to talk about JavaScript from there on. And we'll get back into CSS much later on in the class. It used to be that I talked about CSS for many weeks, for the first, I don't know, 5 or 6 weeks, just straight up. But I've decided to sort of talk about just the bare essentials that are necessary to sort of understand how it works, and then talk about JavaScript. Because the way that the industry is going is that more and more people are finding JavaScript to be an important thing to understand. It's less and less of a deal that you need to know how to write a good CSS file to get ahead. There are a lot of preset CSS frameworks and different sorts of template libraries out there that kind of do the job for you. But with JavaScript, you want to make some really cool interactions and nice behavior that is custom tailored to whatever you're doing. So that's why I'm sort of front-loading that into the class. So we'll be talking about JavaScript within a few weeks, and then CSS much later on, a few months from now. Yes? Question? No? Sorry. All right. Let's see here. Yeah?
So if we can't live stream the classes before the way, can we look at a YouTube video to see what was covered?
Yeah. So if you want to take a look at previous lectures, you can go to the class website and go all the way down to previous classes, way down at the bottom. And this is all stuff from the previous series. This is going to change probably tomorrow. I'm going to put all this into an archive page and just have a link to this lecture with a little link to the lecture video and the lecture materials. You'll be able to be linked to a place where you can download all the materials that I've written so you can compare and contrast what you've written to what I've done. So in case you missed anything or think you've done a typo, or just want to see what I've done versus what you've done or weren't there for it, all the materials will be available there. So yeah, okay, so I'm pretty much done with talking about this for today. We can pick up on sort of making this a little bit nicer next week. But I should say, keep informed. Join one of these things to be able to know about when the next classes are coming. I've got a lab on Thursday. I'm going to be sitting around, not in this classroom, but the classroom right behind this one. So if you're looking for front end, it's going to be in the Turing classroom. This is the church classroom. So just walk through that door or go through the other entrance. That's where I'll be. It'll be from 7 until 9 p.m. So don't show up at 9 because I'm leaving. Pretty much 9 on the dot. But I'll be there, and you'll be able to work on an assignment that I will send out to the email list tomorrow. So if you want to join the web dev or Noisebridge Announce email list, or the Facebook group, or Noisebridge on Meetup, you'll hear about the assignment, and you'll get a link to this the video for this class being streamed right now. All that stuff will be available in that email. So that's what's happening on Thursday. Next week we'll talk about a little bit more CSS in depth. I think that's it. Any other questions before I go? Yes?
Where did you go to find the upcoming schedule?
The upcoming schedule. Oh, yeah. If you want to see the curriculum from the previous series, you go to previous classes. But all of this is going to be cleared out very soon because I'm going to replace it with what happened this week. So if you want to see everything from the previous stuff, you go all the way down to the bottom of this page and click on Class Notes from Previous Series. And you'll be able to see all the notes that I've written here since 2011 when I started teaching here. Series 8, Series 7, Series 6, all the different classes and what all the descriptions of every class was about. So yeah, just keep scrolling down to the bottom of the pages and you'll see them. Yeah, let's see. Questions from online? One question. What type of expertise are you going to have? Well, I think that you should feel confident enough to be able to make a website. What does that mean? I don't necessarily think that this means that you're going to be able to land, a 6.5 figure salary once you get out of this thing and just like blaze your way to the top of the web development world. But you will be able to make a website for yourself or other people. You will be able to get a start on your career if that means doing something for volunteer, doing something as an internship. Please don't do unpaid work for companies. Don't ever do that. But finding some sort of small company or some sort of service or some sort of thing out there that needs some website work done, you can probably find that and do it for them. So that's the sort of level of expertise that I can see you getting out of this class. I'm not saying you're going to be a pro. I'm not saying the work that you're going to put out is going to be like some top-notch stuff. I cannot guarantee that, and it all really depends on your level of practice, your level of just putting your nose to the grindstone and doing the work. Because really, like, I can just talk at you forever, and that doesn't mean anything. It just means that you understand what I've said. It doesn't mean that you can actually put into practice what I've actually told you. So that's up to you. So that's it, though. That's pretty much what I hope you'll be able to achieve by the end of this series. But it's really up to you. Cool. Anything else? All right. Well, thank you for coming. Again, try to make it a regular thing to donate to Noisebridge. In every classroom, we have this little cash slot. If you want to like pop in a little $100 bill. Kidding. If you want to pop something in there, you can go ahead and do it. There's also one by the exit, or you can do it online. Set up a recurring donation, so you can set it and forget it. Or again, if you're interested in learning more about the space or becoming more involved in how the space is run, or just getting to know people, next week's meeting at 7:30 is a great place to sort of introduce yourself, say hello, say what you're doing at the space, what you're looking to get out of it. Great way to meet people. Yeah, but otherwise I'll be here on Thursday. Look forward to the email that I'll be sending out, and I'll see you then. So goodbye. Thanks for coming in. Good.